Okay, so now I want to be able to move away from Mendel and taking a look at peas to something that you can probably relate to a little bit more. If you can do this, you are a roller. So we're going to talk about the rolling gene. Some people who can't do that, they are what's referred to as non-rollers. So the gene is the tongue rolling gene, and we're going to represent that with R's. We're going to use the same letter because we're talking about the same gene, but if you're a roller, we're going to give you a big R. What does that mean? That means it's the dominant form of the gene. If you are a non-roller, that is the non-dominant form of the gene. Let's follow tongue rolling through an imaginary family. Let's take two people, Bart and Marge. Kind of familiar people, right? And we're going to use a tool called a pedigree. A pedigree is a graphic organizer that represents familial or family relationships. You might be inclined to call it a family tree. When we create a pedigree for Marge and Bart, we're going to use a sequence of circles and squares. Marge is a circle. Females are circles. Squares represent males. So here's Marge. And when you take a circle and a square and you join them together in the middle, that represents a reproductive relationship. I know that's kind of cold, but take a look at the tabloids. Marriage is optional for having kids. So this is a reproductive relationship. And here's Bart. Marge is not capable of rolling her tongue. So we're going to put an X in there for that. Bart can roll his tongue. And, oh goodness, I don't know the TV show well enough to be able to tell you their kids' names. So I'm just going to be able to say, oh, wait a minute, isn't Bart the kid? Yeah, Bart's the kid. Here's Bart. Oh goodness, what is his name? Homer! There's Homer. All right, there's Homer. Homer can roll his tongue. Here's Bart. And I know they've got a sister. Whoops, sister. And I know that they've got another baby girl, but let's just say that they adopted a boy. Okay? Now, notice that siblings are joined at the top with a bar, and that by putting a dotted line in there, we're acknowledging adoption, but we have to understand that there is no genetic connection here. I'm going to tell you that Bart's sister cannot roll her tongue, but everybody else can. So now the question to you is, I've given you their phenotype, what they look like, right? Phenotype is how the genetics are expressed. No rollers, and these four are rollers. If I asked you how to determine their genotype, what their genes actually code for, could you do that? Well, you can, and here's how. We know that non-rolling is a recessive trait. If you're a non-roller like Marge, you have to have two recessive alleles. Because if you had a dominant allele, Mendel's principle of dominance would say that you would be able to roll your tongue. So Marge is homozygous recessive. Homer can roll his tongue. There's no X there, so he knows he can roll his tongue. But we don't know what his other allele is. Remember that mom and dad, we all have to have two alleles. We don't know anything about his parents, so now we've got to look to his kids. She can't roll her tongue. She must be homozygous recessive. Marge gave her an allele for not rolling her tongue, and Homer gave her an allele for not rolling her tongue. So he must be heterozygous. Bart can roll his tongue. Homer gave him that dominant allele because Marge didn't have it to give. Marge has no choice but to give Bart a recessive allele. So Bart is a heterozygote. We could also call him a hybrid. We can also call him a carrier. He has the gene for not rolling, but he doesn't express it. He could pass that on to his someday children. This daughter can roll her tongue. Thank you, Bart. But Marge ensures that this daughter is also a carrier. Now, the son that they adopted, hey, you know what? He can roll his tongue. But do we know what that other allele is? We don't, because he was adopted. He could be a carrier. He could be heterozygote. Or he could be homozygous dominant. That's possible. So in a case where you don't know, you got to put both possibilities in there. Now, let's just say that Homer had previously had children with another woman. We would show this way. Let's say he was previously married. And again, if she is a tongue roller, we're going to leave that as an X, a non-X. And we are going to say that they had a daughter. So she is a half-sibling of these kids. Well, if we were going to make some predictions, she can roll her tongue. We don't know anything else about her. Taking a look at her daughter that she had with Homer, she can roll her tongue as well. If we don't know whether Homer gave her the dominant R or her mom gave her the dominant R, it's possible that she could have gotten the dominant R from mom and the recessive. So it's possible that she could be heterozygous, but it's possible that both her parents gave her the dominant allele. So we could indicate both possibilities. So this is a pedigree where we show reproductive relationships, we show siblings, we show adoptions, we show blended families. So this daughter shares half of her genetics with these three. So an interesting situation. Oh, and her? Yeah, we don't know anything else about her. She could also be heterozygous or homozygous dominant. So with that in mind, what I'd love you to do is, let's say that Marge and Homer are pregnant. I'm going to erase this one. Could we figure out what the chances are of Marge and Homer having a child who can or can't roll their tongue? Let's do a Punnett square. We take a look at a Punnett square for this. Homer could produce sperm that carry the dominant allele or the recessive allele. Marge can only produce eggs that contain the recessive allele. If we take a look at the possible crosses, the dominant R, we give the courtesy because it's dominant of always going first. What's the chance that their child, their fifth child, will not be able to roll its tongue? 2 out of 4, 50% chance. 50% chance that the child will be able to roll his tongue. So that's how you're going to need to solve genetic problems. If you say you need to cross 2 heterozygotes, it would be looking like that. If you crossed a homozygous dominant with a heterozygote, it would look like that. And then you'd need to plug the alleles in. Remember that these at the side represent the allele that is present in the sex cell that was formed during meiosis. And that's what your homework is going to take a look at. So that you have some time to get a jump start on your homework, go ahead and get that handout and get going. Bring it in. Give yourself lots of room to work. Bring it in tomorrow and we'll take a look at the options. Thanks.